So here we are at the one end of the layout, and as I mentioned, we were going to do a layout tour. This is where I'm currently at with the grain elevator complex on the left end of the layout. Been using my operator's window as paint storage lately. As we go down here, I had staged the layout for the layout visit on Saturday night, and as it turned out, I had a fairly good crowd come. Figuring out the rough number of cars that fit on each siding track or industry track was kind of a big help. Got the plant switcher over here laid out. Made also some notes around the layout where you can see the feeders and some of the other little notes that I've made. Way in the back corner, that's the Showcase Miniatures antenna tower. I'm going to have that tucked over into the corner, and hopefully it'll camouflage that hard angle back there. The far back track is the original main, and then the track in the front here that you see that runs along closer to the layout edge would be the newer track, and then the barge sits there. So through the magic of editing, I realized that I talked about the barge, but I didn't have the barge sitting there because I moved it. This barge was 3D printed by a guy on Facebook that I found a few years ago. I think it was back in 2021. I have two of these, and they are a scale 180 some feet long, and I think it's the 35 or 38 foot wide, but they are substantially larger than the N-scale cars. Of course, that's fairly prototypical. As we come across here, I have the note for Highway 35. That's actually incorrect. I just wanted a tag for last night during the layout visit. That will actually be Interstate 35 through Minnesota. Coming along here, there's another UTP. This will be further along where the track splits up and goes into 3 or 4 tracks further down here when I get that wall taken care of. As we back up a little bit, the water tower that you see here is a regular Walthers, but it was built up, and I just took it and cut along the seam and mounted it up against the wall. Half of that, it's hollow in the back, but it gives it a really nice illusion because when you look at it from 180 degrees, it still appears as though it's all together, and it doesn't cast any shadows behind it on the wall. Coming around the curve here onto the little bit of a peninsula, this will be the town of Lakeville as I've got it tagged on here. I'm going to be using a downtown deco kit, the Lucy's Tattoo Parlor, but that's going to be the 3rd Street bar. This will be 3rd Street here, and it'll have a railroad crossing there. As we come down here, I've got a few of the footprints for some DPM buildings laid out so I could have an idea of kind of the main street area for this layout. I'm going to walk around here without giving too much of a motion sickness. Can't have a park scene downtown without a gazebo. Have a few trees, and I've also added the Woodland Scenics American flag here as well. The caboose will be a nice touch for the park scene, and I'm still not for sure if I will end up moving this track a little bit further in to keep the distance from the edge of the layout. Coming back around to the peninsula here, I had talked about the DPM buildings that will be in here. I'm having a friend of mine do those up because he does an exceptional job on structure building, and I wanted these to be a little bit higher caliber since they're one of the few first things that you see when you walk in. The trees came from a layout that I was part of during the dismantling, and I thought that since birch trees in Minnesota were very appropriate, I kind of saved the little bit smaller ones to scatter around my layout. The gazebo was a 3D printed piece that I found at the Rocky Mountain Train Show. The flagpole is, as I mentioned, Woodland Scenics. The caboose on the track over here is a Fox Valley, and I'm not quite sure who the hot dog stand was by. I want to say Bush, but I could be wrong. As we go around the layout, talk a little bit more about some of the bits here. Eventually, this will be the Minnesota River that comes in here, and those two tracks will be on a bridge. I'm not quite sure how to lay that out yet, but I'll probably be using micro-engineering 80-foot ballasted deck bridges. The Greenbelt Beer sign is a Miller Engineering, with the equipment shed being a built-up BLMA that I modified to make it appear like it wraps around the footings of that billboard. Get over here and you can see I think these are JTC gates that I've had staged here next to the ethanol the plant office. This is just a Walthers kit that I modernized slightly. I cut the lower basement floor off so it's just a single story. I may end up swapping that out for something a little bit more appropriate later on, but I'm just not sure. The tower here is a 3D print piece that I just temporarily put there. The angle gives it a weird little curve to it. The plant switcher that I have here is an Atlas MP15 that I custom painted and decaled for the United Ag ethanol plant. As you can see the little notes here, that's where the feeder will be for the key switch that is right below here that I mocked up a little track diagram. And then there will be the insulated joints on that turnout. So we come in here, the backdrop will go in along this wall, and that will be cornfield. I'm going to have a few basic low relief structures kit bashed out of some Pike Stuff kits that will look like the processing center of the ethanol plant. Each one of these tracks will hold approximately 4 to 5 cars for the ethanol plant, but I wanted enough to be able to use the plant switcher without playing musical cars too much. Over in the back corner, I used some Nightwing brand tanks. I painted them up for the fermentation tanks since they're a little bit smaller than what they would look like up close, but they gives it a forced perspective of a little bit of a distance off into the corner. Come back around here, we'll focus in on the TCW locomotive. This is also an Atlas model that was custom painted by Jeff Gowers for me a few years ago, and he did a fantastic job on this. One thing that I really wanted to include was a John Deere dealership, and I'm not quite sure if this will be the final arrangement of it or not. I'm going to have a building or two over here in the background, and then this will be part of the inventory. I have a few 3D printed lawn mowers and some other implement equipment that I need to paint up and get that ready to go. The water tank over here is a Walthers built up, but I did a little bit of weathering to it and ended up rusting some of the edges and black washing the concrete footing. Coming back out, this will be a field, and it will be kind of a vignette with 2 clumps of trees on each side. I have some Woodland Scenics cows and some fencing on the other side of the track, and I have this printed farm scene that will be used as a little bit of a backdrop for some distance. I've also got the grain bin footings kind of laid out here, and that should go well with this modified Walther's grain elevator project that I'm working on. It's just two of the same elevators, and then this is, I think it's the Sunrise feed mill. This is a faller kit that I built. It's really small and it's almost Z scale in size, but it works really nice as a supporting structure for this grain elevator project. Here I've got a few pewter castings to add for details. This Quonset hut is just a resin piece. I don't even know where or who made it. I found it at a box at a train show for $1. I have a Trainworks trailer and I glued some round bales to. The tractor, I believe, is an old Concord that I had sitting in a box, and I just thought that it looked cool. I'm not sure how much more I'll detail that if I do, but it'll just be a nice little touch for around the layout. This will be one of the other crossings between the warehouse here and the equipment cabinet. One of the other things that people talk about are stories on your layout, and one of the stories I wanted to tell was this warehouse is just a stand-in. I will eventually get around to scratch building something a little bit more appropriate for the location, but I'm going to be putting a buried track right in front of where these doors are to kind of tell the story as though the railroad used to serve this, but they don't anymore, and that will be essentially a abandoned warehouse. So that's it for the layout tour as it sits right now. Hope you guys enjoyed the update on the layout. I'm going to try to start bringing a little bit more of this content to the channel as I get a little bit more done. You guys have any questions, feel free to post the questions or make comments. Like the video, let me know how I'm doing. Thanks for watching.